Here we go.
All right, good evening, everybody. Let's call the meeting at 6:02. Nancy, you've got attendance?
I do, thank you.
All right. We can get right to our old business. We got meeting minutes from February 8th. Any corrections?
I'll move approval.
Second,
All right, moved by Mr. Berman, seconded by Mr. Ike. All in favor, please say aye. or-
aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain, Mark.
Abstain. Any nays? Marcia? You're muted. Are you able to unmute
Or raise your virtual hand.
or raise your virtual hand? Yeah, until you can unmute. Oh, all right. We'll catch up with Marcia later. The motion passes. Let's move on to new business, and I'll see Deputy Mayor Davis is here. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so let's start with our design team. Deanna, you have an update for us?
Not that much, but so just to update everybody that the 100% documents for both libraries were sent last Wednesday for Prosser and McMahon. We have been touching base with Downs about some questions, things back and forth, so we're working on that. The other update is that we sent yesterday actually during the day, we sent the additional updates for the bridge to wetlands to Peter Castaldi. I have not heard back from him, but we sent the drawings and we responded to some additional questions that he had about the bridge. Those are the updates.
Any update on the swing space?
The only update, I talked to Richard earlier today. Our structural engineer, Michael Horton, is gonna help us on this load issue for the swing space. We heard that there's no information about this access flooring. So we're gonna be working with Michael Horton for the loads for this swing space and the MedLife building.
Yeah, I talked to the landlord, and they don't have any information because it was all done before MetLife took over. I asked Bob to go over there, which he did today, to open up panels and look at the structure, see if we could get any nameplate information. Bob, I'll let you give an update on that, but you know, it sounds like it's a pretty significant structure.
Yeah, I went over, I popped one of the panels up in the open area just to see what was there, and I took some pictures and sent them both to Chip and to Richard. And I jumped up and down away from the panels and checked out the stuff in the panels. That's steel there. It's not tin, it's not aluminum, it's steel, and it's thick. Jumping up and down didn't create any issues on it. And in addition, you have the dividers, there are desks, there are file cabinets, there's all kinds of stuff sitting on top of it. So that my guess is there's not going to be a weight issue. If it's really a concern, I talked to planning and zoning office. This stuff, the plans are in storage from when Cigna built the building. Nobody can tell me what's in those boxes. They don't even know if plans delineating that raised flooring would be in there. There's no way to know unless they get both boxes and they start going through them, which will take a significant amount of time. It's at least 2 to 3 days before they would get the boxes, and then they have to free somebody up to start going through everything looking. as I said, see, based on what I found, I'm not sure there's a load bearing issue.
Well, that's why Deanna's structural
Right.
engineer is taking a look at it, but I mean, I'm sure it had to meet minimum code requirements.
But that would be different for a library.
Yeah, library has a heavier loading than standard minimum, so well, again, structural engineers looking at it.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
good.
The main concern is the load for the book stacks, so we need to look at talk to Horton about Michael Horton about the loads in those areas.
Questions for Deanna, Ava?
This is not so much a question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been through a couple of library moves before. Someone needs to do a point load calculation. Books aren't just heavy. They have an almost unique point load. And you don't want to find out that there was a problem when it lands in the place below that space. Especially if you're using that space to store all the collection as well as the furniture that's already there. That's just load. But when you put books in a concentrated area, that's a very different point load. So I think that's something that we can't skip. Thanks.
Yeah, that's my understanding is that's exactly what's being done by a structural engineer. So, yeah, thank you on that. Other questions for Deanna? All right. Thanks, Deanna. Let's move on to Downs. We've got who's here? Scott's here and Anthony is here, right?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I don't have too much for an update as well. We're pretty heavy into putting bid documents together and going through scopes and writing in them based on the 100% documents we've received, as Deanna had mentioned. One item that's coming up, I know an email went out by the town manager today about having a meeting with the state library next week. Hopefully that goes well enough where there's some sort of release we can do with at least the Prosser Library switchgear without affecting any grants. We think we've come up with a solution for the McMahon building in regards to that switchgear with a panelized system that seems to be workable. It's built a little differently and it's produced more efficiently. And that building, because of the size of it, is smaller than Prosser can handle it. But that's something that, we have to work through with the design team, which is happening. But, that's one of our immediate goals, to see what we can do with the switchgear besides putting bid documents together for mid-March.
Questions for Scott? Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott, you showed us a couple weeks ago the alternate bid list. Could you send that to Nancy so she can circulate it to all of us? So we have that
Yeah, what was that now? The what bid list?
alternate bid list. I know
Oh,
it's a bridge on it and some other stuff on it.
Well, the alternates list.
The alternate list, yeah.
Yeah, it's right in the specification, actually. Deanna wrote it up pretty nice there in the list.
is?
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to take a PDF shot of it, I can certainly do that and send it because it looks a lot neater. But if you want to see it with the costs and the estimate, if that's what you're talking about, then
Yes.
yeah, I could do that. I did send that out with the agenda at our last meeting.
It wasn't attached to that,
It
Scott.
wasn't attached.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, it was supposed to be. So yeah, I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No problem.
other questions for Scott? Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thanks, Scott. Let's go to Chip.
Yep.
Owner rep report.
So they, as far as the move goes, there's one open issue on the lease that has to do with how much storage we think we'll have at the end of, when McMahon opens, but we still have to store things in Prosser. And I received information today from the library, but need to go through that. So, it's McMahon is going to be open first. And at that point, the plan is to move out of the swing space and run the operations at McMahon, but there will still be all of the Prosser materials that need to be stored. And the landlord wants to know approximately how much that's going to be so he can figure out where that would be stored and whether or not there's going to be a rent for that. So that's, I think, as far as I know, the only open issue. So Allison sent that today. I'll go through it and figure out any questions I have and hopefully be able to close that down.
All right.
And then as far as commissioning, the commissioning group, Van Zelm has begun looking at all the drawings. They are putting together additional spec sections and comments related to commissioning to address, the appropriate meetings and requirements that the subs will have to do so they don't start looking for more money as when we start talking about commissioning. Deanna sent over example Word documents so that they could use the formatting, and then they'll send those over shortly in order to get that into the final bid documents.
All right, thanks, Chip. Questions for Chip? Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Chip, I just wanted to check if are we still on track schedule wise? I mean, we're still looking at a April move, or what's the exact date?
Well, April 17th is the lease date in the document. I mean, is the date in the lease, and we're tracking to that.
Okay.
I actually know one other thing I did want to bring up that does prompt me is I've put together a kind of scope of work to give to movers, and we'll be scheduling in this next week to bring the movers in, can start to talk to the library, but also we need to get to updated prices. So now that I've got the list of items, we've got locations, we've got all of that stuff. Now I'm ready to do that. So we can finalize that move cost and schedule.
Good.
Any more questions for Chip? I don't see any more hands. All right, Chip, thank you.
Yep.
All right, committee reports, Elizabeth, and outreach.
Outreach continues to meet bi-weekly. We had a very successful farewell party at Prosser. And I want to say thank you to Bob and Mark from the LBC for attending, and Bev, Leah, Todd, and Patrick from the library board for attending. We had 221 people attend, 132 people attended the McMahon one. And the number one questions are all about where we're going to be and how are we going to maintain service. Barely any questions about the actual new buildings, which was interesting. And I know I heard from a counselor today that he was also receiving questions about where we're going to be. So as soon as this lease is signed, we are ready to move forward with announcements about that. We are going to have a working Google Doc on the back end. So essentially we're going to have a QR code and have people look at our website, just because we are uncertain about how the hours might fluctuate. We know we're only going to have a Monday through Friday open hours currently, but a lot of that we are still working through. The BPL leadership team met today as we're trying to hardline some dates. And right now it is looking like we're going to start a soft closing procedures the very beginning of April, with build up to have the official move out with April 17th. So we are getting that all set. And we're also working on some publicity documents to share with the public and for the messenger, and also large cardboard announcements that we will be putting in all public buildings. And that is about it for now. I guess my big request to the entire LBC is to help get information out as soon as we're ready. Of course, I'm going to forward it to this group to begin with. I also wanted to let everybody know that on Monday night, We are delivering a state of the library address, along with a annual report. And of course, a big part of that state of the library will be information about the library building committee project. That being said, I think the public is going to continue to have questions as we move forward.
Questions for Elizabeth?
Mark, this is Bob Ike. We had the Republican Town Committee last night. And Elizabeth, one of the biggest concerns was the lack of swing space in the Blue Hills area. And Patrick and I attempted this, we spoke on it, said that many areas looked at, but it was difficult to find space in the Blue Hills area. When you do your publicity, can you address those issues because there's big concern about people who were able to walk to McMahon, now you're gonna have to try to get to MetLife. I don't personally have a problem with MetLife, but that's one of the concerns. Just want to bring it to your attention.
Bob, thank you so much for that feedback. And yes, that is a concern shared by library staff and the library board as well. One of the great things about MetLife is it is on the bus lines, and we're going to make sure that that is included in the publicity. That being said, there's a couple of other avenues that we can pursue to make sure that people, everybody can access a library quite as easily as possible. We are also looking at making sure that we are better about pop-up libraries, which is something we really didn't do in the past. I know that again this year we are going to be asking for a bookmobile from council, and we're also looking for some other funding opportunities to help with that. And we're also going to be in the schools. So we're making sure that we're going to have that straight, a pipeline from the library to the schools to really make sure that we keep in touch with students and teachers. So yes, Bob, and I really appreciate that feedback. I know that I said at the last LBC meeting at the McMahon-Wittenberry farewell party, it was a good reminder to us. A lot of people came to the party via the bus. So we are very aware, and we want to make sure that library service is as available as possible. And we're going to continue to try to be intentional about that.
Thank you, Elizabeth, as always.
Other questions for Elizabeth? All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, I think I forgot to also mention Scott Scholl was at the Prosser party. And I wanted to say how nice it was to see somebody from Downs there. Scott, I didn't forget about you. I'm sorry about that.
All good.
He just wanted to get some pizza, that's all.
That's not true. I talked to a lot of
I
people.
know. Yeah, it was a great event. It's a great event. Thanks for doing that to everybody. We did hear from Leah. She's not feeling well. She said she had no report for programming technology committee. I don't know if anybody had any other things about programming or technology at this point. If not, then we can move on to
Excuse me, Chair.
oh,
I did
go
just
ahead.
want to mention something about the swing space and technology, and also in response to Bob's questioning. Chris, can you please share about the rollout of the new hotspots and computers that we plan to add to what we're able to share with our public?
Yeah, so we acquired emergency connectivity funds we're now going to have 50 devices with which the public can access the internet, 30 Chromebook hotspot combinations, and 20 hotspots. So 50 different users at a time from home will be able to access the internet. We're getting it paid for about a year from the government, which is good. And we're about to roll them out probably. We already have some out in the field, but we're going to roll out the new batch probably next week. So we're excited about that. And that'll help with some of the users who use the McMahon library, I think will take advantage of this program.
Yeah, and we're going to experiment with longer loan periods. So especially the people that we know are coming to the library daily to do, important work, we're going to be very accommodating. very accommodating. So again, please continue to give us that feedback. We are, the digital divide is a big issue in Bloomfield, and I think that Bob, maybe that was another aspect of the concerns at your meeting.
Great, thanks, Chris. Anything else under technology? All right, let's move on to purchases. Nancy, we have any purchases?
No purchases.
No purchases. We have invoices though.
Yes, we do. First invoice we have is the TSKP Studio, invoice number 220103-11 for 80% completion of construction documents in the amount of $18,000. And this is at McMahon.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike, seconded by
Second,
Mr. Berman. Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Jesse, did we hear from you?
Yes, aye.
Thank you. And Chris? We have plenty of ayes here. Any nays? Anybody abstaining? Motion passes. All right. Next, Nancy.
Next is also for TSKP Studio, invoice number 200802-14 for 80% completion of construction documents at Prosser. This is through the month of January, and it's in the amount of $55,850.99.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike,
Second,
second by Patrick, I think got to it first. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
aye,
Aye.
aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Anybody opposed? Any nays? No? Okay, motion, I believe that was unanimous.
Yes.
Thank you. Next,
Next is the SLR invoice number 168862. And this is for wetland delineation and impact services in the amount of $3,018.58.
So moved.
moved by Mr. Ike, seconded
Second.
by,
Second,
Yes.
this is Jesse.
thank you. Got you there, Jesse. All in favor, please say aye.
I'm sorry, Chair, am I allowed to ask a question here?
Sure.
I just wanted to make sure that as we're trying to figure out the rules and regulations with the state library, that we should move forward with that.
I don't, well, we are under contract with these people. I mean, the issue is, as I understand it, is how we went about getting under contract with these people, not the fact that we're paying invoices.
Right, the services were performed.
Yeah, I mean, if there's an issue, I mean, I understand the state is questioning some of these purchases. These are professional consultants, just like our architect and our construction manager advising us. So
I guess I'm just, before we actually formally meet with the state library, maybe I just wanted to say if it was possible to hold off on those types of purchases until we clarify just exactly what the rules are. If we're unable to, but I just wanted to put that out there.
My concern, if I could say my concern
Sure.
from a purchasing perspective and a contracting is that they had a duly authorized purchase order. They did perform the services. This wetland delineation happened quite a long time ago, actually, because it was in anticipation of the inland wetlands applications, which happened last fall. So there was a delay on SLR's part in invoicing us, but in general, I like to make sure we pay people on a timely basis for services that were rendered, understanding your point, Elizabeth. But I don't think any of that would change the fact anything that would happen with the state is not going to change the fact that these were duly approved services that were provided, and we are obligated to pay people for the services that were received.
Any other comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. Next one, Nancy.
Next one is for SLR as well, and this is invoice 176941. This was for, also for wetland delineation services in the amount of $123.75.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike.
I think it was Lois that seconded.
I did.
Oh, thank you,
It's a
Lois.
large quantity.
Quick on the draw there. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 That was everybody. Thank you. That was unanimous. Next, Nancy.
This is from SLR again, invoice number 179695 for wetland delineation services. This was back from an October to November and the amount of $2,265.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Ike, seconded by Mr. White. Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Marcia, did we get you?
Said aye.
Oh, thank you. Gotcha. All right, we are unanimous. Thank you. Motion passes.
Next is again to SLR invoice 181998. This is for the offsite transportation consulting for Prosser, and this is in the amount of $2,670.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ike, seconded by
Second.
Patrick. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Chris, did we get you?
No, my apology. Aye. Thank you.
Okay, we're unanimous. Thank you very much.
I think that's all I have in my pile. Was there any other ones that I may have sent out that I forgot?
That's all I had in my
Okay,
file. Yep, that's all.
okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, so we have dates coming up, future meetings. Next regular meeting is March 8th. I will not be able to make that meeting. And the next one after that is March 22nd. Those are our two March meetings. And let's go on to comments from the committee. Do you have any comments from the committee? Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had one quick comment. This again was another item that was mentioned in our meeting last night. And this had to do with the bridge. And I believe it was when we were talking through TPZ and the zoning. I just wanted to mention, comments were made about the possibility of having a roof over top of that bridge. Now, I know that we already talked about having heated pavers and, heated flooring so that any kind of ice or snow would be able to melt. But I just wanted to ask if a cover over that bridge had ever been discussed. I don't recall it coming up in any of my meetings. Is that something that could be considered as a alternate, or is that something that would not be needed given that we would have something on the bottom that would be melting the ice? So I just wanted to ask that question.
Yeah, it has come up from time to time. It's never been developed, as a design thought, because one reason is if you get a windblown anything, it's not gonna really prevent any kind of buildup of ice and snow. But I'd like to think that, if by some miracle we have some funds available,
Right.
that, we could look a little deeper at that. I don't think it's gonna help significantly, but, if we have an opportunity money-wise, I'm in favor of visiting that.
Okay.
I just wanna
I think the first
add,
priority, Deanna, I'll get to you in 1 second. I think, the melting to me is an absolute priority,
Right.
the automatic, the snow melting system. That is a huge priority and, hopefully we'll be able to afford that.
Okay.
Deanna?
Yeah, so that could be on just some list somewhere so that it's something we don't forget about, as you said, Mr. Chair, that we could potentially look a little deeper at some point down the road if there's additional funds.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, it's a whole different category of bridge, I think, when we start doing that. But
Yeah,
let's see where we sit money-wise. Deanna?
okay, thank you for that.
yes, I just wanted to add that during the schematics for Prosser Library, we internally look at the option to adding a roof, and that was architectural is not an element that, especially Taisu wanted to have. We always thought about the bridge itself like these big trusses, like an element, but without the roof. I think the roof will add will change the proportions of the bridge. So I just wanted to point that out. If the roof comes at some point, maybe we just said as an alternate or something, we will need to look in our office about that, because it's not that option that we wanted to go.
From an aesthetic point of view,
Mhm.
from a design, yeah.
Thank you.
Uh,
Also, I just
go
wanted to
ahead.
reiterate my support for both Elizabeth and the library, and what Mr. Ike said, the comments that from our chair last evening with regard to making sure that we do a good outreach to our clients from the McMahon-Wintonberry Library, because they are going to be losing that ability to just walk across the street or walk from their residence over to the library. And so, we do think this is something that really has to be considered so that we are able to serve those customers, as best we possibly can. So I do appreciate all that we're doing, and thank you, Elizabeth, for all the items you talked about, including them in the outreach. So thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nancy, I'm presuming that the construction documents will be on the website sometime this week?
I don't know. They may be too big to put on there.
Okay. Then that raises a question for, I'm not sure, how are we going to be able to access them to look at them?
I think if they're probably in some sort of shared file, they should be able to be accessed, but I'll look into that, Bob.
I think that's what we did before with the previous sets. They were, aren't they on a cloud somewhere?
Get a link.
We can get a link
There
to
was
it.
a link, right? I'll figure out a way that people can access them. If they don't, if they fit on the website, then that'll be a different story.
All right, thank you.
Okay, other comments from the committee? All right, thank you very much. Public comments. Nancy, we have some attendees.
We do have several attendees,
Anybody?
but I don't know, no one has their hand up as of yet. Anyone from the public that wishes to speak, please raise your virtual hand and we can call on you. No one has raised their hand.
All right, well, thank everybody for attending. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Berman, seconded by Lois. Thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we are adjourned I thank
you,
everybody for their
everyone.
time and effort.
Thank you, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.